Hey, Mike back here with Canadian Musician, once again at the Sheridan Centre Hotel next to the Convention Centre in downtown Hamilton, where all the Canadian Country Music Week festivities and stuff is going on. And with me is one of the, I guess, marquee or rising stars at the event this year, Don Amero. Don, how you doing, man?
Thanks, man. Yeah, just here. Tired, but I'm here. I think I'm here.
Your latest album, sixth album, Evolution, came out, was it in August, I believe it came out? Yeah, there you go. So it's still quite recent. It's the follow-up. Your last album in 2015, Refined, kind of really brought you to another level career-wise. It was nominated and won numerous awards, Juno Awards, Aboriginal People's Choice Awards, Western Canadian Music Awards, Canadian Folk Awards. It really, you kind of did the gamut in Canada this year. So I'm just wondering, going from the success of Refined to having to, record the follow-up, was there a sense of pressure, either internally, externally, to having to build and live up to that, the success that comes with that?
I always say Refined is like the album I spent 10 years trying to make, because the 4 albums before that were kind of like practice. Okay. So when Refined came out in 2015, I was like, this is the album I've been wanting to make my whole career up to this point. And it was it definitely set the bar to a new height for me. And so that was with Murray Pulver, a producer out of Winnipeg, and great guitar player, and just a guy, all around sweetheart of a man that I was working with. And I said, how am I gonna beat this, right? As an artist, it's not always, you don't want to. I guess internally there's a bit of a competition happening. And so we said, okay, I've always recorded in Manitoba, let's branch out. We knew Bart McKay was out there and producing great work, and obviously he's done some major things here in Canadian country and Canada. And so we just felt like it was the right step to kind of work outside our province, and Murray and Bart know each other very well, so they actually worked quite closely for this album, Evolution. So we really felt like, in terms of raising the bar, this album is definitely it. And the reason for Evolution was because we just felt like this was the natural evolution of me. So, yeah.
This is also, 6 albums in. It's the first time that you're recording songs that aren't that you didn't write yourself. I believe it's kind of 50-50 on this album.
Almost, yeah.
I'm just, artistically speaking, I'm just wondering the choice behind that. How you choose the songs and why you just opened up to doing that.
Yeah, I mean, so I always kind of joke that I'm a melancholy sort of, I write sad songs. And the, where country music is getting played and listened to a lot is sort of people working the 9 to 5s. They don't want to be crying while they're doing their, day jobs. So I kind of had to look outside for some, I can write a happy song, but I just generally tend to write in E minor. So E minor chord. So that's it's hard to write happy songs with E minor. But so for me, we decided if we were going to find some really good toe tapping type songs, we had to look elsewhere. And so for me, it was a kind of a switch had to go off in my brain to say, there's great songs out there that exist and they need a home. And so when I was able to say, wait, these songs can be a home in me. So my manager, Lori, and I last year, we were driving around and we had a radio tour and we had 80 songs or so to go through, and a lot of great songs, obviously. I mean, every one in my mind is almost a hit, right? So we're listening to it and we go, but that's a great song, but it's not for me. I can't connect with that song. That's not a song that I feel like. I wanted the songs that come out that sound like I wrote them.
Yeah, and speak to you.
Yeah, and so for me it really took I had to connect with the song in a big way. Even a number of songs that I did record, at first I said no. And so I had to live with them a little longer to find find the song's home in me and my home in the song. And it was just really a part of the evolution, which again, this was the reason why we titled this album that. Yeah.
By the time it comes to recording them, I don't know how much you would have gone through a song like that before you actually go to put it down on tape, so to speak. No one uses tape anymore, but you know what I mean? By that point, does it just essentially feel the same as one of the songs that you did, right?
I kind of, yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a strange process. So I'll talk about one. So a song called Church has probably been my most successful off this album so far. We released it a year ago before the album was even sort of finished, but when we put it out, before we did it, I actually said no. I said this is not a song for me. And about a week later, my manager said, listen again. And so when I listened the second time, I was like, this is really a song that was about my dad, who had passed away about a year earlier. When I made that connection, I was able to kind of connect with it in a big way. And usually the way it's gone down for me is it's a little bit funny, is that we go to the studio, we record the song, and it sounds killer and it's great, but then I record the song and it's out and it's done, and then I have to learn it. So then it's like, so we did the hard work in the studio to learn this song and put it together, but then it's like a whole other element of like, now we got to learn how to play this live. And so it's a bit of a challenge in that way too. But, I think we live with the songs long enough for a year and a half or so from the time we kind of get them to the time they end up on the album and to where we are right now to, album's just fresh out, but we've been living with the album for the better part of a year now. So, yeah.
One of the singles from the album, "Live While I'm Alive," if I'm getting that title correctly. Yeah. I know I don't want to give it away. I want you to tell the story, but I don't usually ask these kind of questions where I know the answer already, but I like the story. But that one is certainly one that you wrote and is very personal to you, and it really takes you back to the very beginnings of your career.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious to get the story, but also kind of how things developed from this point.
When I first started this, so going way back, I mean, when I was 15 years old, I picked up my dad's old Gibson Hummingbird guitar, and I started to learn that way. But I dabbled in music and performance for 10, 12 years almost before I actually said I'm going to make a go of this. 2006, I did Canadian Idol. I made it to just before the final 22 that got cut and sent me home. And I came out of that going, wait a second, I'm waiting for somebody to give me the golden ticket to do this thing. So then I went in my sister's attic, recorded my own CD, all the while being a hardwood floor installer. And so I was going in people's homes and laying down floors, and I was miserable. I just hated that life for me. And so one day my boss came in and said, "Man, you look terrible." And I said, "Well, this isn't my dream. I was 27 years old at the time." And he said, "Well, what's your dream?" I said, "I want to be a musician. I want to give that a go." And me thinking of him and the way he was, I expected him to say, "Well, don't be stupid, man. That's never going to happen." Yeah. He said, "What are you waiting for?" And when he said that, I was like, "Holy smokes, what am I waiting for? Why am I waiting for that golden ticket?" So I quit, walked away, and went out and started this music career then, and literally have not gone back to work since. I mean, it's been work, but not like the 9-to-5 job. Yeah. And so "Live While I'm Alive," the second single off the album, is really about that. Like, just sort of like make the most of the life you have right now. Because I mean, life is far too short to not live the best life now. And so that's sort of the premise behind that song. Yeah.
As any musician knows, just going out there and starting a music career is easier said than done.
It's that easy.
So, how did you go about that? Like, how did you get to this point then?
I mean, so there's a lot of things that I don't often share because it sounds really cool that I quit my job and went off and became a successful musician. My wife works 2 jobs to provide for my music habit. My boss said, "Look, if it doesn't work out, you'll always have a job waiting." Yeah. I literally bumped into him about a week ago, and I said, "Is that job still waiting?" He said, "Sure, if you came back, I'm sure you could come work with Doug." And so I mean, it's great that I had this cushion that was sort of always like, you're protected. The cool thing is that I've been able to just kind of focus on my music for 11 years. And, since then we've had children enter our lives. We've got 2 kids, and my wife's first, left one job and then left the other job, and now she's full-time mom, which is the hardest work ever. And music has been able to evolve and grow to this place where it provides a life for us. We can pay our mortgage most of the time, and kids are well fed, and we're very blessed. And so that, but it was this long, slow process. And I've always said that being in this business is like the long game, the chess game, and there's sacrifices to be made, and you hope, sometimes you're gaining ground, and sometimes you have to be willing to give up some ground. And it's really just you have to have patience. It's not going to happen overnight.
What was that feeling like when you reached the point when you realized, oh, this is just aiding us? That kind of, in a lot of ways, that is the dream.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I go through that phase every month still, where I go, this is going to work, right? Honestly, I think success can't be I hope to get there in a year's time. I think every day you have to say, these are the things I'm setting out for my life today. Yeah. And to me, success was never fame, fortune, all that stuff. Yeah. I think that's a byproduct of a successful journey that's set in the right way. Yeah. For me, my hope has always been that if I can use my music for me first is therapy for me. Yeah. And if I can present therapy for other people, and that this music is getting people through some stuff, yeah, that's really why I do this. And so that's a successful parameter for me. Yeah. The Juno nominations, the award stuff that's come along, that's a great feeling, but it's not why I do this. And I think also those things have kind of fueled the fire for me as I go, and because they're great points to talk about in media and stuff. But for me, there's a bigger reason why I do this. And so yeah, I sort of, success is a daily goal for me. So at the end of the day today, I lay down going, okay, I feel like I accomplished the 3 things I wanted to do today, I got them done, and I can, most of the time I feel like I can check off that list, and yeah.
And as your career's grown, as your star has grown, you've used that to be able to kind of grow your role within the Indigenous communities as a pillar of support across the country. I read an interview you did recently where you were talking about, you kind of put it as you grew up in a cultureless home, and you feel like through music and through your career and through your travels, you're starting to kind of become better acquainted or reconnect with that Indigenous culture, and just kind of I'm just really interested in that process and what that's meant to you artistically and personally.
Yeah, it's funny because there's 2 things that growing up, my mom always said, you're Heinz 57, like the ketchup Heinz 57, which I was like I can't put that on a passport. And my dad, he's an East Coast guy. So my mom has the Indigenous roots in my family. So she's Cree and Métis roots on my mom's side. And my dad's from Nova Scotia, so I have East Coast Acadian European descent there. And my dad always said, "Oh, you're a Viking." Same thing. You can't put that on a passport. And so we grew up in the north end of Winnipeg, which is predominantly an Indigenous community. There's a lot. Well, it's a multicultural for sure, but heavy Indigenous population. And so for me, when I became a man, I was like, I got to find out this part of my life, because as I have kids one day, I want them to kind of understand a bit more of that story. And so I remember I was 23, 24 years old, and a friend of mine, Steve Bell, he's a Christian singer-songwriter in Winnipeg. He did an album called Red Brother, Red Sister. A song called Red Brother, Red Sister by Bruce Cockburn. And it was at a church, and I sat in a pew and I just wept, because I realized 2 things that day. 1, I want to do what he's doing. I want to affect people the way he affected me. And 2 was, I feel like I have this responsibility. I feel like I want to be on the front lines of changing the conversation of what people think of Indigenous people, because the song Red Brother, Red Sister speaks about the injustices done to Indigenous people in this country. And I was like, I want to be part of that, the movement that's going to change the way people talk about Indigenous people. And so that was the catalyst for me. So that's 12, 13 years ago, I started to say, I want to be a guy that's a positive role model of this community. I want to be somebody who's proud of that heritage. And I'm proud of all parts of who I am. But because I was so well connected to the Indigenous community, I felt like that was the one that I felt closest to. And so for me, I don't take that responsibility lightly. I think there's a lot more I could be doing, and I don't want to spread myself too thin in my life with having to be. We always talk about this sort of being a juggle and a balancing act between family and work. And so I hope that with what I do and what I offer to the world in music and in my stories, that it really does, that it's really for everybody. But a big focus for me is sort of, again, being part of that, changing the conversation of Indigenous and non-Indigenous relations. Yeah.
It seems like, because Canada obviously has a pretty disgraceful history of suppressing Indigenous, not only Indigenous culture, but Indigenous art and Indigenous artists. But it seems like across Canada, across all genres, there's just a real explosion of Indigenous artists that are really entering the mainstream in a way that, there's Buffy St. Marie and, Robbie Robertson and that kind of stuff. But there seems to be a mass influx of Indigenous artists entering the mainstream right now in a way that we haven't seen. Whether it's like Snotty Nose Rez Kids, who were just shortlisted for the fantastic hip hop duo that was just shortlisted for the Polaris.
Great name. Yeah.
It is Tanya Takak, who won the Polaris a few years ago. List goes on, on and on. And
Tribe Called Red. Yeah.
Of course, you can't.
Of course.
William Prince, who
Love that man.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
He's someone whose name I'd heard for a while, but only really properly checked out recently, and I've been listening to him constantly since then. The guy's an amazing voice and amazing songwriter. And of course, yourself. And all those artists I mentioned are in different genres, but they're all receiving, obviously, due credit. And I feel it has to be more than just like the talent, because surely in Indigenous communities that there is always talent.
Yeah.
So what's now made the difference? Why are Indigenous artists able to hit the mainstream in a way they didn't before?
So we were kind of just talking about this a little while ago, just today, about how I think what it is it's an individual mindfulness to that conversation, and I think it's individuals sort of saying, we want to be part of the change, and a big part of that is the bridge building between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. And because there's been all these mandates and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that's sort of happened, and because this conversation is way more prevalent now in this country than ever before, I think people's mindfulness to Indigenous peoples and Indigenous art is way more open, and so I think that's a big part of the conversation. And I think William Prince, myself, Logan Stotts, Tribe Called Red, Tanya Tiak. I think, and the list, like you say, goes on and on. There's so many of us that are. I think the stars have aligned for us to sort of, as we see what happened to emerge at this time. So I think that there's been a lot of frustration by some people. Go, oh, you're just flashing your Indigenous card now because it's cool. I would be here fighting to be in this position regardless of how cool it was to be Indigenous or not. Yeah. But for me, it's really about, I think it just serendipitously happened that this conversation was way more open than ever before, and I'm so honored and blessed that I get to be one of the guys that gets to have these kinds of conversations. So, yeah.
And I know you have a showcase coming up shortly, so we got to go in a second. But with Evolution only been out for a couple of weeks now, you're really just getting in, and now with CCMA week happening, you're really just getting into the full swing of the whole promotional thing that comes with an album release, obviously. So, what do you have planned? But maybe more broadly speaking, from a career perspective, essentially, what do you want this album to do for you? How does this fit into the blueprint of your career?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, like you put your art out there and you just hope that people kind of like look what we made. What do you like it? And at the same time, like it really is. I think art is a piece that people can look back to in history of that time and go, this captures a moment in that time. And so for me, every album is a moment in time for me where I can go back and go, oh, I remember that season of my life. Yeah. So for me personally, I like the fact that Evolution is going to speak to Don Amero in 2017, 2018, and I can look back at that as a older guy from now and go, that was that piece of my life. But at the same time, I really hope that, like I said before, I think music is medicine. It's medicine for me. I hope that this music becomes a bit of that for people. At the same time, because I've emerged into this country music scene and evolved into this place where I'm at now, I really hope it becomes something that people can really just enjoy the music and get behind and just tap their toes to and really love that. And I think that I really hope that it deepens the conversation that I get to have in this music scene, in this country music scene, and really be that people will look at me and say, this is a guy of substance and of truth and authenticity, and that's really what's going to resonate with people from this. Yeah.
I'm sure they will, man. And Don Amero, fast-rising Canadian and folk music star. I guess more folk is correct. I'll say country and roots music star. Yeah. There you go.
And it's rock pop folk.
There you go. Don, man, thank you for doing this.
Pleasure, man.
Congrats on all the success so far, and I hope it keeps growing for you.
Appreciate it, man.
Cheers, man.